Okay, here we go. Welcome to the third event in North Sydney Council's new online information session program. Before we begin, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and pay my respects to their ancestors and spirits, past and present. My name is Rob Emerson. I'm fortunate enough to be the Director of Open Space and Environmental Services at North Sydney Council. And with me in presenting today is Melissa McManus. Melissa's Council's Landscape Technical Officer and one of the absolute drivers in initially developing and subsequently reviewing both Council's street tree strategy and urban forest strategy that have ensured North Sydney Council remains focused on tree management. The purpose of today's session really is to provide you with some information why trees and vegetation are essential components of a healthy urban environment. We'll give you a brief overview of the wide range of benefits we believe are provided by the urban canopy, and we'll detail the specific canopy objectives and targets set out in North Sydney's urban forest strategy. Our presentation will also touch on the history of the urban forest management and canopy cover in the North Sydney local government area over the past 20 years or so. Melissa will also highlight the recent trend of canopy decline, which is causing the community and the council concern within the North Sydney local government area, and the actions that council and the community need to take to reverse this trend. A key action has been amending the tree protection dimension thresholds in the Development Control Plan, and these changes will impact how the residents, arborists, contractors, developers manage trees on private land in North Sydney, and we'll outline those changes for you. But prior to us kicking off, just some housekeeping. Several of today's participants have pre-submitted questions, and we'll endeavour to address these through the presentation. Also, all participant microphones will be muted throughout the session. If you're participating via a computer or a smart device, you can use that chat function to submit a question, and during the session, after our presentation, we'll respond to the questions. Alternately, during the following session, you can send your questions to yoursay@northsydney.nsw.gov.au, and council staff will endeavour to provide a prompt response to help inform your submission. Thank you, and I'll hand over to Melissa.
Thanks, Rob. Well, as Rob said, I've been here for quite some time working to help preserve and see our urban forest continue in perpetuity. And it's my great pleasure to take you on this little journey through the history of North Sydney's urban forest management. There's some really positive parts, and then there's some not so positive occurrences, which I'll hopefully explain to you through this slideshow. So Rob's kind of given you an overview of how we're going to run this session, but basically to give you a bit of background, I'm just going to run through the land form and land use and a bit about our population and housing. We'll talk about urban forest, why it's important, our canopy cover objectives and goals, an analysis of the trends of our canopy cover over time, and then the nuts and bolts of our actions. So North Sydney is quite unique. It's a very small council area. We're only 10 square kilometres, but we've got 77,000 residents living in that area. 54% of our land area is covered by hard surfaces, and only 9% zoned open space, 4% bushland. We've got very steep landform with very poor sandstone soils, and we've got 18.6 kilometres of foreshore, which gives us all the issues that come with salt-laden winds and harbour views and so on. And to top that off, we get a daily influx of 17,000 students and 50,000 workers every day. So it's a lot of people in a small area. Population and housing, I just thought this is really useful. It'll mean more after we get into the guts of the statistics, but this is our housing breakdown. So 10% of our houses are these, 10% of our dwellings are these separate houses. About 25% of our dwellings are the medium density, and about 64% are the higher density dwellings. Now, the key thing to note here is that whilst the separate houses only make up 10% of the dwellings, they cover 41% of the land area. So that will mean more as we get through the slideshow. And the pressure is on North Sydney to accommodate up to 7,000 new dwellings. So just to set the scene, urban forest is a term that's become very commonly used now. So urban forest is more than just the pretty green bits and pieces that fill the leftover spaces between buildings and roads. It's an integral component of a healthy urban environment, and it provides immense services and benefits to the community. So without it, we'd be much hotter, we'd use lots more energy, our stormwater levels would be worse, and we'd be way more stressed out. So just these images across here show you that urban environment and the different densities of canopy cover. So the definition of urban forest for our purposes, it's the totality of all trees and shrubs that are more than 3 metres tall. And that's on all land, public and private. And it's measured as a canopy cover percentage. So when we talk about the canopy cover in the rest of the slideshow, we'll be referring to it as a percentage of cover. Okay, why is urban forest important? There's so many things that trees do for our urban environment. They capture air pollution. They cool the city. You can cool an area by up to 5 degrees, the shady area under a tree. They also do what's called evapotranspiration. So they give off moisture. They humidify the area around the tree, making it cooler around that tree. They increase property values. Trees in a leafy street are worth more than the similar street in the same suburb without trees. It's documented. They pump out oxygen. They create windbreaks and ameliorate the wind tunnel effects of the city. They take in carbon dioxide. They increase the plant diversity and they support wildlife. They screen noise and they filter runoff and reduce soil erosion. Now, a lot of those benefits are quite quantifiable. So there's internationally accepted software out there that quantifies in dollar terms the value of carbon storage or the value of annual pollution removal. So our urban trees are giving dollar value. They also give us less tangible benefits. There's social benefits by having active, connected communities. You've got streets that are lined with trees, it's shady, it's beautiful to walk to places instead of drive. If there's no trees, it's hot and exposed, people will get in a car. There's also increased economic vitality. There's studies been done that show that consumers are actually prepared to pay up to 12% more for products in a beautiful shopping centre. Compared to a shopping area that doesn't have any leafy qualities. There's also the health and well-being, again, less tangible, but if you've heard of a company, an organisation, I should say, called Beyond Blue, they've done a major study a few years back. They produced a document called Beyond Blue to Green, and it's a compilation of all of the health and well-being benefits that have been studied, documented and proven. And they've put them all into one big document. Basically, good landscapes with plenty of tree cover can actually lead to better mental health, faster recovery of people who are in hospitals, improved academic results. I know this sounds really vague, but the studies are there to prove it. And even less crime. Suburbs with trees, these were studies done, these ones were done in America, but Beyond Blue has compiled them all together. It's a brilliant document. So recognising all these really important benefits of trees, North Sydney has had a long history of really valuing our urban forest. So way back in 1996, we developed our first edition of the North Sydney Street Tree Strategy, and we've updated that numerous times, roughly about every 5 years. We go back and revisit that document. The next strategic document we have is the urban forest strategy. So whilst the first one covered predominantly the street tree population, we realised we needed to cover the entire urban forest. So that was first produced in 2011 and the last update was in 2019. We'll talk a little bit more about that further on through the slideshow because that was the impetus for us to review our tree protection policy, which I guess a lot of you are online to find out more about that. So I'm just giving you the background of how we got to those changes in our tree protection controls. And those tree protection controls, they're contained within our development control plan. So that was the draft amendments were exhibited earlier this year and adopted in September. But previous to that, that's where our original tree preservation order was contained in there. So into the guts of what we've aimed for in our urban forest strategy. So one of the key things is to set some canopy cover goals. So the internationally accepted target for our climate is 40% canopy cover. And I'd like to note here that the New South Wales government has actually adopted this target of 40% canopy cover for the Greater Sydney area. What we did in North Sydney, because we're not your average suburb, we're tiny and we're extremely densely populated, we felt it was prudent to actually look at that target in more detail. So the internationally recommended target of canopy cover varies depending on the intensity of the land use. So a realistic target for central business districts, places that look like this, the internationally accepted target is 15% canopy cover. In urban areas, the target is 25%, so that's these sort of medium density areas. And in suburban areas, the internationally accepted target is 50%. So this is this sort of landscape here. So based on how much of North Sydney's land area is occupied by these different land uses, we were able to come up with a very specific target for North Sydney, and that's 34.4%. All good so far. Okay, now here is the roller coaster ride that we have been on. So we've got our overall target for North Sydney is 34.4%. We've been measuring canopy cover in North Sydney since 1997. So back then, the canopy cover across the whole LGA was only 19%. We measured again in 2001 and we got it up to 24%. We also measured again in 2008. This is our goal. In the urban forest strategy, our goal is to measure canopy every 2 years. That's a bit more than 2 years gap there, but you know, we were at least measuring way back then. So when we got to 2008, our canopy cover came in at 33.9%. I mean, that's essentially 34%. That's pretty close to target. So we're pretty pleased with ourselves there. And all this while, I'm just going to mention here, all this while our tree preservation order height dimension was 10 metres. So when we got to 2008, we thought rather than give ourselves a great pat on the back that we're nearly at our target, we better break that down into the different land uses and see if there's areas where we can improve. So if we look in our CBD, yep, we're achieving, the target covers 15% and we're achieving 16.5, you beauty, we're winning. The next one down, urban areas, the target 25%, we're achieving 32.4, awesome, still going great. Suburban areas, the internationally accepted target's 50% and we're only at 39.8. So, you know, if we're going to focus some energies, that might be where we would look. We also looked at our own separation of land ownership. So we broke it down into public land, private land and roads. And an important thing to look at here in this first column, I hope you can see at home my little mouse moving around on the screen, but public land only makes up 25.7% of our land area. So even if we had 100% cover on the public land, we're still not going to achieve our target. So this is a process that everybody's got to be a part of. Private land makes up 58% of our land area. So you guys out there that are in charge of land in North Sydney, you are a key player. The other area that we broke down was roads. So we've got roads make up 16% of our land area. So we set ourselves a target of 30% cover over roads. Ambitious, I know, but we were pretty close actually at 28.1%. So I'm going to take you back up to the top row now, and we're going to start to see what happened when we measured again in 2014. We had a look and our overall canopy cover had dropped to 30.7%. And we're like, oh, this is not good. Maybe it's just because we're using more accurate systems. Let's not panic yet. But then we started to look through the breakdown as we go down the column, and we're losing canopy cover everywhere except on public land. We're doing great down here, but everywhere else is slipping down a little bit. So we were pretty keen to get the 2017 figures in just to see how we're going. And 2017 confirmed to us that we are not going well. We've dropped down to 28.2. We were at nearly 34, 33.9. We're now down to 28.2 overall. And again, we're losing it across every area, even public land. We've gone back a little. So that was when we started working on the review of the urban forest strategy, which was adopted in 2019. And then this last column here, the most disappointing bit of all is 2020, we're still going backwards. So we're down to 27% overall canopy cover, and we've dropped back across all of the areas. And private land, we've had the biggest losses over private land and the biggest losses over suburban areas. So enough of the numbers, let's get on. Okay, so now we've got some pictures here. What went wrong? From 2008 to 2020, private land's down from 31.6 to 22.4, and suburban land's down from 39.8 to 32. It's the wrong direction. We've got to have a look, see what went wrong. So we've got the landscape fashion. People want paved outdoor rooms. They want to be able to use all of their outdoor area for entertaining, for outdoor kitchens. It's a fashion thing. We've also got urban consolidation and development pressures. We've got the fire service, the 1050 ruling, trees and vegetation were lost through that. We've got the SEP infrastructure in 2007, allowing a lot more building to go on without necessarily involving council. The global financial crisis recovery program, we're trying to build. And then sitting along behind that, we've had the North Sydney tree protection height of 10 metres. So we take a look at these little pictures here and here. There's no development gone on there. I mean, there's a little pool in the second picture, but this is just suburbia that's lost a lot of trees. So I'm going to take you through a whole bunch of pictures. Don't cry, please. It's a bit sad, but this is 2009, this is 2019, same location. Just general suburbia. Yeah, there's a pool popped in the backyard here, but it's just suburbia, same buildings, but less trees. Down here, this is a bigger development. We did have all these trees, now we've got all this building. Here we go again, little by little. This canopy loss that we've experienced, it's not one thing, it's little by little, and it's all over the place. I'm going to take you through loads of them. Here's a school capacity. They mightn't be building more buildings, but the playgrounds, they're squeezing more children into the buildings they've got, and the playgrounds aren't coping. So, you know, here's a school that's gone all over to synthetic surfaces and, you know, culled a few trees out of there. Here we go, metro station. We need development, you know, it's happening, but we're little by little, a few trees here, a few trees there. Roads. Now, this is the most tragic part. Roads are down from 28.1 down to 23% cover, and roads are a major source of our urban heat and our urban pollution. They need tree cover more than anywhere else. So there's all sorts of reasons. We've got the B-line services with double-decker buses, but we've also got every other bit of infrastructure imaginable goes under the roads, under the verges. So we've got power, we've got power up above and under, we've got gas lines, we've got water lines, we've got sewer lines, we've got stormwater. They're all going under the footpath, under these trees. So here we are, 2011, here we are, 2018, same intersection. Sad. There's also the unintentional loss. You know, we all love trees. They get protected during construction or during the back landscaping works. But what we forget that a natural tree will have a root system that goes way beyond the drip line. They don't have some giant big taproot that goes straight down. They have feeder roots that spread out. So, you know, we think that we've looked after a tree on a development site or on a building site by putting a bit of protection around the trunk. That just doesn't cut it. You've got to think about this is the whole support mechanism keeping the tree alive. So, you know, this is just a little diagram that shows if you dig a trench through, so this is just showing the structural roots. You imagine that this tree with all those feeder roots in the diagram before, if you dig a trench through here, you have taken off half of that tree's feeding system and support system. So just, you know, trenching underneath, now that we have the technology, is such a better way to go. So the Australian Standard for Protection of Trees on Development Sites has been around since 2009, and it details all the minimum things that we should be doing to protect our trees when we're building around them. But we still experience this inadequate allowance for and protection of trees. And what the sad thing is there, these failures to protect them don't cause immediate death. Like a little branch broken off here and the roots compacted down here, no one notices that. The tree kind of clings to life for a while, but many years later, you end up with a picture like this. So when this car park was built, that tree probably looked spectacular and everyone patted themselves on the back because we've saved the tree. But if you don't look after the root system, this is what happens. So I'm going to just continue on there and not harp too much. I want to talk about the new actions that we focused on in the 2009 review of the Urban Forest Strategy. So what we wanted to do is we broke it down into these key areas: value, protect, maintain, plant and monitor. So value came at the top because we need everybody to be on board. You've seen 58% of the land is in private ownership. So we need everyone to understand and value our trees. So that's everyone: residents, developers, the energy providers, the water providers. We need everyone to understand how much we value our trees and how much we need our trees. The next thing, protect. We've got to protect what we've got. So this is where we went down the path of a policy review, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail after this. Maintaining, we need to maximise the longevity and the benefits that we're getting from our existing trees. So again, we want to share our knowledge with the community on how best to maintain their trees. So we're here to help and support those landowners to get the best life expectancy out of what they've got. We also need to plant. Now that's been ongoing. It's down here not because it's the fourth most important, but it's because we've already been doing it. And I've got a little table I'll show you in a minute about how we've been whacking as many trees as we can in the ground for many years. What we want is this thing called continuous cover arboriculture. So we want a huge age range of trees. We don't want all our trees the same age so that they're all going to reach maturity and pass away at the same time. So we've got to be constantly planting so that we've got a real diversity of age classes out there in the tree population. We need to try and encourage, I've put the word enforce, encourage replanting, and where we can, we'll enforce them if we've got the authority. And we want to assist landowners to plant. So we've got a few programs that are up and running already, and we will be looking at more of those sort of programs to help people get more trees in the ground. We also need to continue to monitor. We wouldn't even know that we were losing canopy if we hadn't been doing all this monitoring for all this time. I cannot... it's such a valuable thing to do, to monitor your canopy and know which direction you are heading. Keeping accurate records and looking at statistics. I love numbers, but yeah, just looking at the mapping layers is a great way to see where we're losing. Okay, so planting more trees. That sounds like the easiest answer, but we're already at 50% on council land. So this little table here just shows you the different ways that we plant trees. And over the years, we keep our numbers. So, you know, and the numbers are going up as we pass through time. We're putting in as many trees as we can, and we're helping with the native trees on private property as well. We've also got to look for innovative spaces where we can put the trees where we'll get the most benefit. So I said that roads are one of the biggest causes of urban heat. They're hard, black surfaces that radiate heat. So, you know, this is not our best work, but gee, it's you know, it's doing a job. We've got hardy species in there. We'd do it differently if we did it again, but this is the sort of innovative stuff that we've got to do to try and get more trees into the land that we've got care and control over. Okay, so protect and maintain. Protecting existing canopy or trees is the simplest way to achieve our target cover. They're already in the ground. They're already providing benefits. And I think I can't stress enough that a new tree can take up to 30 years to get up to a full canopy, a full maturity. We can't afford to wait that long in our current urban environment. We need the cover now. So the best way is to protect what we've got. So you do whatever you can to protect existing canopy trees. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the details of our review of our policy. What we thought was appropriate, we knew that North Sydney's 10-metre tree protection dimensions, 10 metres high or 10 metres wide, or a trunk circumference of 1.5 metres, that's massive. And it worked for us for the first, from 97 to 2008, our canopy cover was still going up. But once it started going backwards and we could see that the losses were predominantly occurring on private land and suburban land, we really have to revisit this. So the first step for us was to conduct a benchmarking survey. So we contacted a whole bunch of other Sydney metropolitan councils to have a look at what their tree protection dimensions are. So this table here, Randwick's tree height 6 metres, City of Sydney 5, City of Parramatta 5, Mossman 5, Lane Cove 4, Sutherland 3, Hornsby 3, and here we are, North Sydney 10. Okay, so maybe we aren't quite aligned with industry best practice anymore. While we were at it, while we had the attention of these other councils, we asked them a whole bunch of other questions that we've used for our in-house work as well. So we looked at other dimensions such as canopy width, such as trunk diameter. We also looked at things like, did they have exempt species? Did they have exempt pruning that people could do without requiring a permit? and then some statistical stuff like the number of applications they get per annum, how many of those are developments versus just residential applications, their staff and their processing time. So we looked at lots of things to come up with what we thought would work for North Sydney. Now this one is just a quick little visual to show you where North Sydney sat in relation to tree protection dimensions. So here's us, North Sydney, 10 metres. Here's the average metropolitan of 5 metres. But as you saw by that table, there was one other council at 6 and several others at 3 metres. So here we are. This is North Sydney's new tree protection dimensions. We've brought that height down. So now if your tree is 5 metres tall or more, you'll need to apply for a permit. If your tree is 5 metres or more wide, you'll need to apply for a permit. So even if it's not 5 metres tall, but it's 5 metres wide, then you will need to apply. Or if the trunk circumference is 1/2 metre, and that is measured at ground level. So just be aware of that. The exemptions, we know that having these reduced heights will mean more people will need to apply for a permit. That's fine. We've got a great tree preservation officer who'll come out and have a look and give you advice while she's there. So it's nothing to be afraid of. We've made a few exemptions. So you've got trees that are dead. They need to be certified that they're dead by a horticulturist or an arborist, and they must not be required for habitat for native animals. But if you've got a dead tree that's not habitat and it's certified as dead, you don't need a permit. Noxious weeds, that's the old term. They're now called biosecurity threats, but that was too many words to fit on here. So noxious weeds, unless they get up to 10 metres in height. So some of the camphor laurels, they're beautiful big trees and they're doing a lot of good for the environment. So we want to look at managing those. So you will need a permit if they're more than 10 metres height. But we have, in line with what a lot of other councils have done, we've got a whole bunch of exempt species. So you've got African olives, bamboo, box elders, Ratamachia, the China doll, cocos palms, rubber trees, ailanthus, the tree of heaven, and Schefflera umbrella trees. And then there's some other exempt species that are only exempt if they're not on a heritage item. So they could be, these are things like the celtis, the European nettle, Indian coral trees, privet trees, willows. They're all protected regardless of size on the side of a heritage item, but they're exempt if they're just on a general property. And it's worth noting that bungalows and Kentias are also protected regardless of size on those heritage sites. Trees inside a building, so if it's in an atrium and inside, you don't require a permit. We've also looked at what other councils are doing with regards to exempt pruning. So pruning of deadwood has always been allowed to be done, deadwood and dead fronds, but we've included now maintenance pruning. So you can take up to 10% of an existing tree crown volume, as long as those branches are less than 100 millimetres in diameter, and they're no more than 2.5 or 2.4 metres above ground level. So 2.4 is about a standard ceiling height in a modern house, and within 1 metre of existing buildings. So I've got a little diagram on the next page that explains that better. All work must be undertaken in accordance with Australian Standard for Pruning of Amenity Trees, AS 4373. And there's a little clause here for maintenance pruning of hedges. So there's a definition of a hedge. So it's a row of trees that have been grown as a hedge, all the same species, and they can be pruned without a permit as well, as long as they're being done by a qualified person. So here's a little diagram. I hope you can all see that on your computers at home. So branches within 1 metre of a structure, as long as they're less than 100 millimetres thick, and branches that are under 2.4 metres at their attachment point to the tree, again, as long as they're less than 100 millimetres thick. So this big branch here, that's more than 100 millimetres. So even though it's below 2.4, that one's got to stay. So these are all explained in layman's terms in our new suite of brochures. So we've got 2 of them done so far. The Managing Trees on Private Land has all those diagrams, and that's most relevant to what we've been talking about on our way through here. But there's also another brochure that we've had for a while that explains how we manage the trees on our land. So if someone wants to prune a publicly owned tree that's overhanging, there's details of how to do that in that one. And we're working on the Managing Trees on Development Sites brochure as we speak. So our goal now is to get the message out there so that everyone can get on board and help us reach our canopy cover goals. So education is a big part of this. So this information session, I hope, has helped to answer loads of questions for people. We've updated our frequently asked questions on the council website. The new brochures, which I just showed you the covers of. We've got all our existing programs and we're looking at some new programs. So at the moment we've got Native Havens and Streets Alive. So if you want to get involved in planting habitat trees on your land, Native Havens is your place to go. If you want to get involved in planting on public land, Streets Alive is the way to go. And for just out and out street tree planting, you just contact our tree management team. So call the council number and we'll send a tree management officer out to have a look at what tree should go in the street. If there's a vacant space there, we're going to be on your side if you want a tree there, that's for sure. And we just started working on a new program with the Enviro team. There's a lot of interest in food production and a lot of capacity for trees that produce food. So we've got beautiful trees like macadamias and mangoes and our citrus. And so that's a program, keep your eyes open for that one. So out of those, we're actively seeking partners and we're actively looking for tree planting capacity. So we want to recognise and applaud these people here on the left, these guys that have already got awesome canopy cover in their backyards, that's great. And then we want to be seeking out these places like the photo on the right because we just see so much capacity for tree planting there. So that's where we're heading with getting this message out to everyone and getting everyone on board. We're all in this together. It's the only way we're going to achieve what we need. So that's me finished for now. Hopefully I've answered loads of the questions that have been posted earlier on pre-session. And I think I'm going to hand over to Rob. Rob might want to answer any that have come through. I've been busy looking at the slideshow, so I haven't seen what questions you've sent through to us. But hopefully I've answered lots of them. Thank you.
Okay, I'll kick off on the first one. There's a question, what are the chances of getting land bridges and trees across the Bradfield Highway? It's a fantastic question. The council doesn't have authority over the Bradfield Highway, but as we know, Transport for New South Wales are undertaking some major infrastructure works on the highway, the Western Harbour Tunnel, the Warringah Expressway upgrade. The council's been advocating strongly for land bridges to reconnect basically the two sides of the North Sydney municipality that have been cut by the Warringah Expressway, Bradfield Highway. The problem is cost. That's the Transport for New South Wales have come back and suggested the problem of land bridges is cost, but the council's still advocating strongly for that to occur. In every instance where there's a major infrastructure, state infrastructure project, the council also is, we're very keen to get additional trees in on state infrastructure properties as well, like Transport for New South Wales or Roads of Maritime. So we're always advocating, but I guess the short answer is, what are the chances? The chances aren't probably great of getting land bridges because the costs are significant, but that's not going to stop the council from advocating for more of them. I might get you to ask the next one, Melissa, in regards to the 10% pruning rule within a certain time frame.
Yep, it is. It's within a 12-month period. So there's a lot more detail in the DCP. If you go to section 16 of the DCP, all the absolute fine print is in there. The brochures and the frequently answered questions will cover the general stuff. But yes, it's once in a 12-month period. And the next question regarding parts of the DCP being updated to improve outcomes on planning in relation to building and planning, they have been updated as well. They also fall into section 16. And yes, we have detailed replacement planting and where that will be required, how much will be required, how we calculate it. So that is in the DCP. And yes, we will be requiring equal amounts of canopy to be replaced, and if they can't be replaced on the site of an approved development, then the planting will happen elsewhere in the vicinity.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that, and maybe this is a biased, I've been around North Sydney for a long time, but one of the things, I think the most important thing about what improves our commercial business district, particularly down in North Sydney, where we have those large buildings and corridors of buildings, is what saves the CBD, in my view, is the street trees, the significant street trees that were planted in the 1980s, most of them fundamentally as a result of Ted Mack's planting scheme. But without those significant street trees in the CBD would be a poorer environment for the people that work there. So we're very cautious about ever allowing anyone to remove trees from the CBD, but it does happen, and we're always very keen on getting more trees planted in the CBD as part of development consents.
These are the same ones that are up there.
Okay.
So there were.
Oh, well, here.
Okay. Talked about that. There's some questions about planting in a particular street, and I think I covered that during the presentation, that you just contact council and we'll allocate your request to the right officer, and they'll come out and have a look and see what trees can go out there. Streets Alive is a great program for working on pocket parks and other parcels of public open space. We're just sorry, bear with us as we read. These are some questions that came in prior to the session. So yeah, all trees over 5 metres of high or wide or with the trunk diameter will require an inspection by the tree preservation officer. Not hard, no fee. She'll come out or he'll come out and give you good advice.
Yeah, I think we're pretty. That's pretty well.
Oh, there was a question about possums.
Oh, there was a question about possums.
Yeah, we do have a program of providing possum boxes to relocate any annoying roof dwellers, and our bushland management team can provide further advice on that. So again, just call council and we'll help with advice and discounted, subsidised.
Yeah,
that's the term. Possum boxes.
And I'd give a plug to our whole tree management team. We've got a great tree management team in North Sydney who will, for a simple phone call, will come out and provide the community with advice on how they can best maintain their canopy, increase their canopy. So if you have any questions beyond this session in regards to what's happening at your place. The advice is free. It's good advice. They're a great team, and they're more than happy to come out and visit you and provide that advice. As Melissa had suggested earlier, this is not just a council problem, this is a whole of community problem. And the only way we're going to improve our tree canopies is if we all manage this together. So we're looking for every opportunity, every idea. I'm sure there's plenty of ideas that we haven't considered to improve the canopy across North Sydney. So we'd love to hear any ideas in how we might be able to do that.
Okay, there's a few more coming in up there. North Sydney has a good percentage of waterways on its fringe. How are the waterways factored into green cultivation and tree canopy concepts? That's a really good question, actually. Pretty much, I alluded to our bushland cover way back at the beginning of the presentation. And in actual fact, nearly all of our bushland follows the coastal fringes, you know, Berry Island and Ball's Head. So for us, we're very mindful of the fact that a large proportion of our tree cover is along that really harsh growing conditions of the coastal fringe. So yes, we're aware of it and we've factored it in and very mindful of that.
And the next question is, when do we get to feedback to council efforts in a more meaningful way and at length? When will we be consulted? Well, this is not the consultation. This is really just providing advice on what we're currently doing. But we would like to consult with the community about improving this problem that we've got with a declining canopy every day. So I'm more than happy for any of the community to contact me directly, 9936 8221, or they can contact Melissa or any of our tree management team. We want to hear from the community. We want to hear how the community thinks we're performing, but we want to also hear from the community about how we think the community might progress the tree canopy also.
Okay, and then the village renewal plans.
Village renewal plans. This is there are some village renewal plans for the Kirribilli and the Blues Point Road area. There's been some for other commercial centres across North Sydney. What's the chance of getting native species planted in these areas? Well, I know some people are concerned. Some people, it's a strange thing that some people are on a divide. Some people love native species, some people love ornamental species. What the council does in every instance that we're looking to plant trees is to try and find the right tree for that location. I was involved some time ago with the planting of London plane trees in North Sydney, and there are a lot of people that are concerned about the London plane trees because there are people that suffer from allergies. But the CBD of North Sydney, as an example, it's a bigger example than these smaller Kirribilli and Blues Point commercial strips. But the CBD needed a large tree that could consume a lot of pollution, that was deciduous to provide sunlight in winter, and that would grow in those conditions. And whilst I appreciate there are people that love and there are people that hate the London plane tree, they've provided the right tree for that space. They provide the right scale and all those other elements. At Kirribilli and Blues Point, there's smaller scale CBDs. We do look to plant Indigenous species or native species where we can, but we have to plant them we have to plant the right tree for the right location. So if we can get away with planting, well, not get away, if we can plant native species, we do. If we need to plant a tree that has different characteristics, we will do that as well. Did you want to add anything to that, Melissa?
Yeah, look, I'd like to add to that in a certain way. We're not tree racists. Every tree has its place in our area. It's really important. We're investing so much time and energy into planting a new tree. We need to be confident that it's going to perform in that location. And the urban environment is horrendous. Our native species, our Indigenous species, in a perfect world, that's all we would plant here. But most of our urban settings are far from the original growing conditions that those Indigenous species are acclimatised to. So it's a really tricky one there. Some places we can look at the site and go, yep, this is a perfect spot for a locally Indigenous species. And we've got, if you have a look at our mapping system, we've got biodiversity corridors mapped across our LGA. So we know where we want to link up our bushland areas with Indigenous species. But when we get down into those villages, it becomes a very harsh growing environment. And I'm going to be the teacher. I've got one more slide here in case I wanted to explain this. But this little slide here speaks 1,000 words, I think, for how the natural environment and the urban environment are totally different. And, you know, the urban environment's all hard paved surfaces, the roots are constricted, compacted surfaces, the tops are chopped out, there's overshadowing, there's wind tunnelling between the buildings, no water goes through those hard surfaces. It's really tough growing conditions. So our goal is canopy cover. So our species choices will be to choose the species that will survive in a given setting. So I know that we'd all love to go down the native path, but it's not always the most ideal way to go. So, sorry.
I can't,
yeah, if you can reach over, Rob, and click that mouse and click the cross on that little thing down the bottom.
Right.
Yep, now we can read the rest of the questions. There you go. So schools seem to have a good footprint in North Sydney. What programs are there to increase and to work with schools on environment and tree programs? Oh yes, some of them have got great capacity. Others of them haven't even got a playground left. So it's a bit of a generalisation there because the school populations are growing out of control. But yes, it's a real opportunity area there. And we've got some programs already going with the schools.
Yeah, we do. It is an issue with the schools. The schools are constantly looking at capacity issues to try and fit more of our student population into them. And as a result of that, they have less public open space. In fact, they generally recreate, well, not all schools, but a lot of the schools in North Sydney use our parks and reserves for recreation because they don't have suitable recreational spaces on their own grounds. We've got an environmental team that goes out and works with schools on a whole range of different environmental issues. I'm not sure we have a program where we provide trees to schools, but we probably should if we don't. So I'll have to take that on notice, and if we don't have that program, we need to introduce it. But yes, schools are going through a more and more difficult time as their student populations continue to increase, and there's not enough schools to cater for them.
I think that's the bottom of them. I think that's all our questions so far. Okay. Okay, so yeah, it may seem that the new guidelines are a bit confusing, but in actual fact, they're pretty much aligned to what is the industry average across Sydney. So from a contractor's point of view, I don't think this would be too confusing. To a general resident, it could seem confusing having all these exempt species and exempt pruning. I'd like to reserve the comment there until you've seen the nice, simple little brochure. The plain English brochure, I think, does a pretty reasonable job of explaining what you can and can't do without a permit. And the worst case scenario is if you're not sure, call council or send someone out to have a look and advise you. Yes, okay, there used to be giving new citizens a native tree at the ceremonies, and absolutely, yes, that does still happen. And those trees are generally grown by our nursery, so they are locally Indigenous and genetically grown from local seed. So we've got a fabulous nursery down at the coal loader, and we grow heaps of native Indigenous plant stock down there that's used by our bush care volunteers, and it's used in our native havens programs. So yes, that's a nice question, and we do still do. Okay, looks like we've answered everyone's questions, Rob.
It does look like that.
I don't know. I'd just like to say thank you. It's really nice to have people interested in this issue, because this is the way we're going to solve the problem and reverse the decline. So it's really great to see everyone participating in this little info session and feeding us through all these fabulous questions.
Yeah, and I'd just like to encourage anyone, if they have any ideas or any questions that come after this information session, can you please reach out to the council officers? We're all there. We're all more than willing to talk through all your ideas. There's nothing. There's no poor idea. We need to look at every option we have available to us to improve this issue. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we